It did it. It did it. I cut it out of that scrap. That is nuts. Hey everyone, this is a review of the Creality Falcon 2 Pro laser engraver and cutter. After my review of the original Creality Falcon 10-watt laser cutter, Creality came back to me and asked me to review this one as well. So I'm going to cover how to set this thing up, accuracy that you can expect out of this machine. I'm going to show you some projects that I've done in various materials, and I'm going to tell you what I like about it and what I don't like about it. So starting off, the big difference with this laser engraver from the ones that Creality has made previously is this one is fully enclosed, which is really going a long way for improving the safety and the convenience of using this laser. I really like the way they designed this enclosure. These front and back panels are flexible, and it's kind of like a roll-top desk. The whole thing just flips up and it gives you lots of access in the front. You've got this whole area right here. You can reach down in and get to whatever you need to. Looking in this machine from the front, you've got the laser head on an X and a Y axis. It moves back and forth. To focus, you take these two set screws and drop it down and use the included focusing block with your material. It works pretty well and it's easy to do. Let's talk controls and features up front on this right-hand side. First of all, I really like this. There's a safety key. You can turn this off and you can pull it out and take it away, and a kid or someone that's just messing around with this can't turn it on. That's a great safety feature. You've got an e-stop button if something's going wrong. You got a flame, hit that button, everything stops. It's got a separate on-off switch right here. And then you've got offline controls, so you can put a micro SD card in here, you can frame what you're going to cut, you can home the laser, you can jog it, and then you can start your job and pause it, all without needing a laptop on hand close by. You can run it completely off that micro SD card. Also on this side, you've got your USB-C port for running to a laptop, so you can connect Lightburn to it, which is the software I would absolutely recommend to use with this. And then you've also got your power jack right here, and you've got a switch for your light bar that is inside in the front right here. So the light bar is up front like this, and that's okay for the most part. You can see it lights it up pretty well in here. The only exception is when your laser is all the way up here, you see it starts casting shadows across the back, and you can't see very well anything that's behind this gantry. So for the most part, this light bar is good right here. I think I would have preferred an additional light up here next to the camera, and that just might have made it a little bit more lit up when the gantry's in the way. And there's that camera that looks down on your work area and helps you place your work pieces for your cuts. On the other side of this, you've got a switch for your fan. So I've got it on auto right now, so when I have the hood closed and I'm cutting, the built-in fan on this will automatically be exhausting that air. You've also got the air assist that comes with it, and it plugs in right here on the side of the machine, and then you've got internal tubing. And the great thing about this is also the air assist control. So you can turn it up and down right here. I leave mine pretty much up all the time, and when you're in the software, if you're going to engrave something and then cut it out, you don't want air assist going when you're engraving, but you want it running when you're cutting. You can make the software turn this on and off depending on what cut path it's doing, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. It's a huge game changer. You don't have to sit here and watch your file anymore. It just does everything automatically. Then on this left side over here, you have your fan port. This hose just connects right there, and you can see the fan is automatically wired into the machine, so it turns on and off when you need it. So one thing I am super impressed with this machine is how clean the interior is without a bunch of wiring running everywhere. That was one of my complaints with the original Falcon laser, was the wires just kind of dragged across the work area even when you were moving the gantry back and forth. And on this one, you just have these tiny little service loops that are the bare minimum that you need here. You've got your air assist and your power running together. That's what these two cables are. And they run right in here, and then they run down this track as well. They're tucked away, out of the way. They're not going to get on your work surface. They're not going to hit your work. It is a fantastically designed cable management system in this work area. Now you'll notice the work area in here doesn't have a honeycomb on it, and it comes with these built-in work supports that you can move around and space in different spacings. You can put them closer together or farther apart depending on what you're cutting and what you need to support. So these things have worked really well for me. I barely ever use honeycomb with this thing. You can fit a full 16-inch by 16-inch piece of honeycomb in here. You just have to move the laser head up when you're laying it in. So if you've got like paper or something that you need to fasten down with a honeycomb, you can use that for those lighter materials. But for the most part, I just use these supports that come with the machine. The great thing about having those supports is everything that's small that you've cut off drops through, and Creality has a tray that slides out and you can remove the whole thing and just dump your offcuts into the trash when you're done. This is a really sturdy, really beefy drawer, and it's got a lip all the way around so it holds your stuff in until you dump it out. So I really like the ease of use this has for maintaining your machine and getting rid of your offcuts. So the cut area that this thing has is roughly 16 inches by 16 inches. That's 415 millimeters by 400 millimeters. And the work volume is substantially bigger, so you can fit bigger work pieces in here, but you can't cut all the way to the edge. So it's 22¼ inch wide that you can fit in here and just under 25 inches deep. And the way to do that, you can't fit something in here that's 25 or 24 inches. Move the laser out of the way, and it's hitting the back, and I'm lowering it, but it can't get all the way down. So it's stuck right here on the ledge, and it can't get flat on the work surface. So to get a 2-foot long piece of stock in here, it is possible. You've got to open up the tray almost all the way out, thread this in, and then close it up. And there you go. You can get about a 3/4 inch tall piece of stock in that way. Setup on this is very minimal. The thing comes almost completely assembled with the exception of the enclosure top here. So you do have to assemble the frame and then put the acrylic panels on. But other than that, everything pretty much comes assembled except for putting the laser head on the gantry. Something that was a little bit odd to me is all of these panels came with their protective clear film still on them, which is pretty much how all acrylic is shipped. It was easy to take them off of the sides, but these pieces that came pre-assembled with the hardware trapping the film on them, you can't quite get all that film off unless you disassemble everything. I've still got little pieces here and there. I think Creality meant for you to leave them on, but I don't see why you'd leave that on after it's assembled. So one of the first projects I did with this was really fun. I made this lovely image of my dog from this picture. And I think it turned out absolutely awesome. I didn't quite capture all of the crazy eyes, but it turned out really well still I used a bunch of different hardwoods. These are all 1/16 of an inch thick. And this is maple, purple heart, wenge, and padauk. I think it turned out really great. I have less than 10 minutes of laser time on this. 2 hours of like taking the photo and getting all the pieces arranged in Photoshop and Lightburn, but total laser time 10 minutes. Turned out awesome. Another great project I did is this flower with my daughter for Mother's Day for my wife, and it's just cut out. This is 2 separate scaled versions of it. Cut out of this in about 12.5 minutes of cutting with this on 1/8 inch plywood. And then it just tabs and slots together. I glued it together for her, and then my daughter painted it. And it's just a really great, simple gift you can do that's, you know, a little bit better than a macaroni necklace, but still handmade with your kid. It's a really fun project. I'm looking forward to lots of more projects like this in the future. I did some material test cards. These are both 1/8 inch. This is black acrylic, and this is Baltic birch plywood. I got one pass at 450 millimeters a minute on the Baltic birch, cutting through clean with no pieces left over. That's absolutely fantastic. And that is with the air assist. The air assist will help you burn through these faster, and it will keep soot from building up on the surface of the material as well. With the black acrylic, it was a little bit slower. My sweet spot that I found was 500 millimeters per minute, but 2 passes got all the way through this. So both of those, that's really pretty decent cut speeds for this thing. Way faster than the 10-watt laser I've used in the past. I've done slate engraving. I've done some coasters. Those turn out super crisp. The raster engraving on this, where it's just a shape, is absolutely fantastic. It's very sharp lines. And this is on there. It's not rubbing off or anything. I didn't put any sealer on it, just engraved straight on the slate surface. And the 22 watt laser offers a good balance between cutting and engraving, because with a 22 watt, you've got 4 5.5 watt diode lasers pointing at the same spot. So you have to line up 4 different lasers. With a 40 watt, you've got 8, and a 60 watt, you've got 12. So the more lasers you have to line up in the same spot, the wider that spot is eventually going to be. So if you want really pinpoint accuracy, a lower power laser is good for engraving. Higher power is good for cutting. 22 watt is kind of right in the middle of all of those and good for both. Now, something else I tried this out on was stainless steel. I wanted to see how thick it could cut. I bought some 3/1000 of an inch thick shim stock and was able to cut out some shim washers from that. Now, these do end up with a little bit of a burr, so you'll have to sand that off if you're really trying to get that thickness of material. And I think it could probably handle at least 5/1000 of an inch thick. I just haven't gone and tried any of that yet. You'll see this is pretty warped after doing that, especially not so much cutting, but engraving. It really does a number on it if you've got thin material. So you're gonna have to use thicker material if you want to engrave stainless steel and get all those different colors. And if you end up doing that, you probably won't be able to cut it out after you've engraved it. Besides, you do get some discoloration around the edge of the cut line as well. All right, here's a test I did with engraving stainless steel. I obviously need a thicker piece so it doesn't warp like crazy when I'm doing this. But you've got a couple different colors. There's a blue, a purple, kind of a magenta, and then like a reddish orange. They're really pretty, and if you dial in your power settings and your speed when you're engraving, you can get a large variety of colors. I need to do a more detailed setup of this on a thicker plate and get a full spectrum of these colors. But you can do some really amazing things with this once you get that dialed in. So another great thing this has is an overhead camera that lets you align a workpiece when you're going to be cutting off of it. These coasters I centered only using the camera. There are other methods Lightburn allows you to do where you can shoot the edge of it in a couple spots and it'll give you an outline of that circle. If you need really precise placement, you can do it that way. And you can also make templates if you need the same placement over and over again. That's still gonna be faster, but if you've got a one-off thing, or if you're just cutting something out of material and it doesn't matter exactly where it lands, that camera is so handy for lining things up. Especially if you've got some scraps that you're trying to cut and it's tight and you're not sure you can just frame it out and look and say like, yeah, that's definitely gonna hit where I want. The camera helps so much. I actually thought I was going to have to buy some more maple when I was doing this project right here for the muzzle. And I was able to just squeeze this into a scrap piece of wood that I had and it came out perfectly. There is zero chance I would have gotten that right without having the overhead camera to place this. Now, when you're cutting with this camera, it's pretty accurate. I did all of these coasters just with camera placement. You can see this one's pretty well centered. And this one's a little bit more off-center than I planned on it being, and I think that's because I was a little bit off to the side instead of straight underneath. So if you really want to get it perfect, put it straight underneath, and you make sure you got your calibration dialed in. Now, when you're calibrating this, Lightburn is a great way to use for calibration. You just take this little card and you put it flat underneath the camera on the bed. You put it flat for the center one, and then for all the others, you make sure it is normal to the camera lens. So it's pointing at a right angle to that camera lens. And what you're doing is you're calibrating lens distortion because you've got a wide angle fisheye lens and you want to get all of that distortion out so you're seeing straight lines. Now that calibration works pretty well within about less than a 1/16 of an inch of the actual spot if you are working off the original height work surface you calibrated on. So if you do something at a different height, like I cut this sheet metal shim out when it was sitting on top of 3/4 inch tall honeycomb, look how much that moved this. I was shooting for just right at the edge of this and it went past. And the reason is because I had it over here and that camera is looking and it's saying, all right, you're right here. But if this is up off the surface, it really thinks I'm over here with the camera. So that's what happened with this. It's just geometry is why that didn't work, because it's scaling that dimension the farther you get away, and I was closer. So Just know if you have a work surface and you want precise positioning, you need to calibrate for the height of that work surface. So while this camera is very useful and I'm really glad they have it, it is a little bit low resolution when you're looking at it in the software. It's enough to tell where you're gonna cut, but that's about it. So you can see the edge of something, but if you wanna make out any details, you can't. So one feature this machine is missing that some others in the similar price points have is it doesn't have an automatic pass-through. So a lot of them will have a door where you can fit something that's longer than what your work volume is inside, and then you can cut and it goes out the other side. This one doesn't have that option. I don't know if the crumb tray has a sensor on the door, but you might be able to rig something up so you can have something hanging halfway out, but you still can't cut all the way up to the center. So that could increase your cut capacity. I haven't tried that myself, but that's the only way I see to do that. There's no door on the back to go all the way through. It does know when that drawer is opened, so you'd have to figure out a way to spoof that if you wanted to do a pass-through style with the drawer out. Let's talk accuracy, what you can expect to get with this when you're cutting. I didn't have super high expectations out of this because it is running on belts, which can stretch, and the stepper motors, if you move it, they don't have feedback in them, so it doesn't know where it's at. So it homes every time on the limit switches, and then it goes from there, and there's no feedback on its position while it's cutting. So I was absolutely blown away when I tested this, and after calibrating, the factory cal was pretty good, but I cut 6 inches, I told it to cut 6 inches, used light burn to tell it, no, you actually cut whatever dimension I measured, and then entered that back in. After doing that calibration, I told it to cut 6 inches in the X direction. I got 6.001 inches, so 1/1000th of an inch off. And then in the Y direction, I got 6.002. So over 6 inches, I had only an error of 2/1000ths of an inch. That's insane. Now I did notice when I was cutting different size shapes out, not just that 6 inches I calibrated on, I noticed a little bit extra error, and I realized I had not accounted for kerf width when I was doing my calibration, so I had to go back and do that and account for the width of the laser cut in my calibration when I was measuring that piece that I cut out afterwards. Overall though, super impressed with the accuracy you can achieve with this machine. All right, let's talk safety, because like any other tool in the shop, if misused, a laser can be dangerous. What I really like that Creality is doing with this Falcon 2 Pro is they're moving less from making all of the safety requirements on the user and making sure the user follows good procedures, and they're moving that more to inherent safety by design. So this thing takes a lot of the burden off of the user to make sure you're being safe. It's got an automatic fan that turns on and exhausts fumes. It's got a cover that completely covers everything here and makes sure if you forget to put your safety glasses on, you're still gonna be okay. I still do wear my certified safety glasses with this every time I run it. It does come with a pair of laser safety glasses, which is green, which doesn't block blue as well as orange or red does. I'm glad they used red for this material here. I did ask them about the optical density of the red, and they didn't have that available to tell me, but they did tell me that they did provide paperwork on their FDA Class 1 laser product compliance. This also will not run unless you have the cover closed, which is a great safety feature. I accidentally tested that when I had light burn up and I bumped the start button instead of hitting the jog button, and this thing didn't start emitting light from the laser. It just beeped at me, and I quickly figured out, oh, great, the safety interlock works. Other safety features this has, you see it's got an airflow sensor, so if your air assist gets blocked, and it isn't outputting enough air when it should be, this lights up. It's supposed to automatically stop when there's a fire sensed. I have not tested that because I don't want to set stuff on fire by accident, but it does have that feature. It's supposed to stop the laser if it senses a flame, and then if the lens starts getting dirty, it will light up and tell you that as well. Something I thought was a bit of an odd design choice, there is an extra USB hole right here for if you wanted to put the camera on this side. I don't see why you would though, because the USB-C controls for the computer are on the other side. So there is a hole in here that you can see into the work volume, that it's not protected with the red acrylic here. So I just covered mine up with a piece of tape, and I don't have to worry about accidentally looking in there and seeing the laser running. So overall, I really love how Creality is focusing on safety with this product. Another note on safety, you always want to be in the room with this thing when it's running. You don't want to leave it unattended. So when I've got this thing running, I'm doing other things in my workshop so I can keep an eye on it while it's going. Let's talk exhaust and fume extraction. When you're cutting things with a laser, you're burning them. So if you've got wood, you're making wood smoke. If you've got leather or acrylic, you're making some pretty smelly fumes. So you want to make sure you're exhausting that and or filtering it somewhere so it doesn't stink up your whole house or set off your fire alarm. Now that last part about the smoke detector is personal experience. I had a filtration unit that I thought was good enough. It was good enough for the 10-watt laser cutter I had because I really couldn't smell any fumes, and I didn't see any smoke. The fire detector never went off, but with this 22-watt laser cutter, it was putting out enough more smoke because it's cutting a lot faster that my smoke detector ended up going off when I was in the middle of the Mother's Day present cutting these out. And I thought I had a pretty decent fume extractor and filter setup, so I think I'm just going to end up with this thing in my garage with a big 4-inch exhaust line running out away from the house. Unfortunately, I don't have any windows in my basement workshop where I run this, or I had been planning on running this, so it's gonna have to move so I've got access to outdoors. So overall, I think this is a fantastic, very capable machine. It's got a great mix between engraving and cutting, performs great for both of those, and I love all the upgrades and features this has, especially for safety, that Creality has added for this model.